By the time 1965 rolled around, the Augustus family had grown, and so had Jamaica. The first few years of independence had been filled with a mixture of pride, hope, and challenges, much like the early years of Jacob and Grace's marriage. Their son, Marcus, was now a lively 3-year-old, full of energy and curiosity. He was always on the foot, eager to follow Jacob to the workshop or watch Grace in the kitchen. In the early mornings, Jacob would rise before the sun, the rooster's crow acting as his alarm. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the small house, a routine Grace never missed, no matter how busy or tired she was. Jacob was grateful for her steady hand. She was the heart and soul of their home, and he knew it. Life was hard enough for a lot of people in Jamaica, despite the optimism that independence had brought. The realities of living in a fledgling nation were starting to show. Jacob's carpentry business was doing well, though. He had become one of the most sought after craftsmen in St. Anne, known for his quality work and fair prices. People came from as far as Runaway Bay and Ocho Rios to place orders. He had even hired a young apprentice, a wiry boy named John, who had a naturally knack for working with wood. You think we're going to need a bigger house? Grace asked one evening as they sat on the veranda watching Marcus chase Peeny Wallies in the yard. Jacob chuckled. Maybe. Business good, but I'm not sure if we'll expand yet. Grace smiled. She had always been the more practical one. I just mean the business, we're expecting again. Jacob turned to her, surprise and joy lighting up his face. Again? Really? Grace nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. You're going to be a father again, Jacob. Jacob stood and wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. His heart swelled with love and pride. Another child, another blessing. It was hard to believe how far they had come, from the roadside where he had found Grace to building a family that was growing stronger each day. In those early years of independence, Jamaica was finding its rhythm. The political landscape was shifting, with Alexander Bustamante leading the country's first government as prime minister, and the People's National Party under Norman Manley offering opposition. There was talk of development, of building roads and schools, of providing opportunities for people to lift themselves out of poverty. But it was a slow process, and for many, the dream of a prosperous, independent Jamaica still felt distant. Jacob felt it too. The work was steady, but the cost of living was rising. Food prices were creeping up, and jobs outside of agriculture and small trades were hard to come by. Many young men were leaving the countryside for Kingston, searching for work in the capital, while others sought opportunities abroad in places like England or America. Jacob remained rooted in Green Hill, however. He had built a life here, a family, and a reputation that he was proud of. He saw no need to leave. Instead, he worked harder, saving or investing in his business. Their second child, a daughter named Joy, was born in late spring. She had Grace's dark, expressive eyes and Jacob's determined spirit. With two children now, their small house felt even smaller. Jacob knew it was time to think about expanding not just the home, but his business too. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Grace brought up an idea she had been thinking about for a while. Jacob, what if we start selling with furniture and things to the tourists? Jacob looked at her surprised. Tourists? What do you mean? Well, more of them coming to Ocherias now. The hotels are spring up everywhere. People always looking for custom furniture and things for them home. And the foreigner them look like them like handmade things. Jacob considered her words. It was true. Tourism was growing, especially in Ocho Rios, which had begun transforming into one of the island's major destinations. The new development projects, funded by both the Jamaican government and international investors, were bringing in more visitors from Europe and North America. They came for the beaches, the sunshine, and increasingly for the local crafts and culture. That no sound like a bad idea, Jacob said, nodding slowly. But how we go about that? We don't have no connections in other hotels. Maybe we don't need connections, Grace replied thoughtfully. We can start small. Make a few special pieces and carry them to the market near the cruise ship. If people like them, they will buy. Jacob smiled at his wife's ingenuity. We can try, no harm in trying. And so they did. With Grace's encouragement, Jacob began crafting more elaborate pieces, rocking chairs, intricately carved coffee tables, and headboards that told stories of Jamaica in their designs. Grace handled the business side, negotiating with vendors at the market and ensuring that each piece was polished and ready to be displayed. Their gamble paid off. Tourists loved the handcrafted furniture, and soon Jacob's name was being spoken of in news circles. Among the hotel owners, shopkeepers, and even some of the wealthier Jamaicans who were always on the lookout for unique pieces to furnish their homes. Orders started coming in from as far away as Kingston and even Montego Bay. By 1969, Jacob had expanded his workshop, adding new tools and hiring two more young men to help with the growing demand. Green Hill was still a quiet place, but it no longer felt as isolated as it once had. The Augustus family was thriving, and with each passing year, their prospects grew brighter. As Jamaica entered the 1970s, the nation was grappling with its own growing pains. Michael Manley had become prime minister, ushering a new era of democratic socialism. His government promised reforms, land distribution, education, healthcare, but with it came unrest. There were protests and strikes as the economic struggles of the people clashed with the slow progress of change. Many in Jamaica were disillusioned with the promises of independence, feeling that the wealth of the nation was controlled by a few. Jacob and Grace saw the effects in their own community. More young men were leaving Greenhill, heading for Kingston or overseas in search of work. Even in Brownstown, the once bustling markets were quieter as people tightened their belts and spent less. But Jacob's business remained steady, buoyed by the tourism that continued to bring wealth to certain parts of the island. In 1971, the Augustus family welcomed their third child, a boy they named Malcolm. Their home was now filled with the sounds of children's laughter and play, the clatter of tools in Jacob's workshop, and the gentle hum of Grace's voice as she worked alongside him. Their life wasn't easy, but it was full, and it was theirs. In 1975, Marcus, now a teenager, began showing signs of wanting to carve his own path. He was tall for his age, with a quiet intensity that reminded Jacob of himself at that age. But unlike Jacob, who had always been content with the silence and the peace of Green Hill, Marcus was restless. "I want to go to Kingston," Marcus said one evening, his voice steady but firm. "Me hear there's more opportunity there. Maybe me can study, learn a trade." Jacob's heart clenched. He had hoped Marcus would stay, work with him in the carpentry business, and eventually take over. But he also knew that times were changing, and Marcus was a child of Jamaica's new era. "If that's what you want, me support you," Jacob said after a long pause. "But remember, home is always here." Grace, sitting quietly, placed a hand on Jacob's arm, offering him a reassuring squeeze. They both knew that this was a part of life. Their children would seek their own way just as they had done. And so, as Jamaica continued to grow and change, so did the Augustus family. Jacob and Grace had built a strong foundation, but the world was shifting around them and they would have to adapt. New challenges lay ahead, but they faced them as they always had, together, with love, faith, and the unshakable belief that they could weather any storm.